Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Joel Passen, and Joel is a proven technology entrepreneur and leader with 20 plus years of success creating value and driving measurable results at the intersections of sales, business development, product strategy, operations, and customer experience. Before co-founding Sturdy, a next-gen customer experience solution that helps companies improve customer satisfaction, Joel co-founded Newton Software, a B2B SaaS company headquartered in San Francisco that was acquired by Paycor 2016. Prior to that, Joel co-founded Gravity Technologies Inc., a company that owned and operated businesses in the talent acquisition industry, including the first recruitment processing outsourcing company focused on technical talent. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Joel. Welcome, Joel.
Hey, how are you? Great to be here.
All right, Joel. So we like to give our guests an opportunity to share in their own words a little bit about your journey. So could you share with our listeners how it is that you got from where you were to where you are today?
Well, I appreciate this question. So I've always been a commercial leader, meaning I've always had responsibility not only for net new growth, but also for responsibility for customers. And where I am today in terms of having started a company that focuses on using AI to ultimately improve the customer experience by deeper listening to customers, I think for me, the journey was more of like, and this may sound a little off-putting to some, but I was kind of like a frustrated engineer to a certain extent. I was a frustrated commercial person in many ways. So I think the desire to sort of solve a problem that I had as an operator, a commercial operator for 2 decades, has led me to where I am today, which is trying to solve that problem at scale.
All right. So could you share maybe 1 to 3 top, I would say, areas that you believe as an organization, especially in your industry, that you believe it's important for you to focus on, or it drives your success in the space of ensuring that you're delivering a great or a fantastic customer experience?
Yeah, I think 3 things is I like everything in 3, so absolutely. But I think the first thing is, in many ways, I think that removing the abstraction layers between our customers and the level of leadership within our organizations that can actually do something about the issues that we're hearing is really important. And what I mean by that is, I think for the last 10 or 15 years, we've created not only technology-driven abstraction layers like, chatbots and automated knowledge-based stuff. And it's all sort of addressing what I would think of as a symptom, but not necessarily as the root cause of perhaps customer frustrations in terms of customer experience. So an example would be like, if we have to continue to build these really acute knowledge bases, and what we're addressing is constant customer confusion, for example, wouldn't it make more sense to take the data that we're deriving about what's confusing the customer, take it back to our product teams or services organizations, and address the root cause? So number 1 is, I think we've got too many abstraction layers between us and our customers. I think number 2 is, the people that are responsible for customer experience and ultimately are holding the bag, and oftentimes sort of perhaps even the number for the board, can only solve about 30% of the problems that we face around customer experience, or challenges we face about customer experience within the organization. So for example, going back to like a product or service, which ultimately we deliver to an end user, if I'm the customer experience person and I'm holding the bag for that number, whether it's, some sort of arbitrary number, like not arbitrary, but I guess arbitrary, like NPS or CSAT, like something that we're being measured on, but even more importantly, a revenue number, I have to rely on my other teammates to ultimately contribute to the success of that experience, right? And I think that's a big challenge. And I think the third one is kind of an expansion on that topic, which is I think that we've lost sight as organizations at large that everybody's job is customer experience, providing the best customer experience as we can, whether it's the billing team that designs processes around auto renewing and billing our customers, to the product teams that are delivering product, to the services teams that are delivering services, to the sales teams that are and account management teams that are being truthful and ethical and honest about what we actually can provide in terms of value. It's a super long answer.
That's okay. Thank you so much for sharing, Joel. Now, in listening to you, also wanted to know if you could share with us. You've been in the whole customer experience space and you're noted as a top customer experience voice on LinkedIn. If you were to maybe debunk one of the biggest customer service myths that you see organizations still using as a driver in their business, when really and truly that shouldn't be anything that they should be guided by, what would you say that is based on your observation and experience?
It's going to be really, it's going to make me unpopular.
It's going to make you.
Yeah, it's going to make me unpopular. I'm going to lose the popularity contest on this answer, but, I'm going to treat this less like a cable news show, so I'm not going to swear, but if you do follow me on LinkedIn, and it's not just to be incendiary, but I really think health scores of customers are one of the most overused, underpowered abstraction layers in our that people use. I think they're garbage. And I'm speaking from experience, not because I have something against them or the companies that help us build them or anything like that. It's because too many times I've been in executive leadership team meetings and I take the board slides in and I've got all these green lights on, maybe with our top revenue accounts, for example. And I go back to team meetings 2 weeks later to go back through the account reviews. And so many times I've gone from green to gone with no leading indicators along the way that have ever given me any kind of indication that we were in trouble. So that's my answer. And, some people are in love with health scores and they spend a lot of time building them. And quite frankly, I think they're full of telemetry data and opinions that just don't yield anything that I can use as an executive leader.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, Joel, can you also share with us what's the one online tool, resource, website, or application that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
GPT-4.
ChatGPT, that is brilliant. And tell me, how do you use it? I mean, what are some of the day-to-day activities that it helps you to accomplish?
As an early stage entrepreneur, I feel like I spend a lot of time sifting through data and crafting messaging. But to make a finer point, for example, I have a client, they're called Hawk Media. They're one of the largest independent ad agencies in the United States. And my outbound sales team, let's say, wants to find more companies that are similar to these folks. And there are hundreds of these types of agencies in the United States, not of the same magnitude of Hawk Media, but similar. And when you go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator and all these other Apollo or Zoom Info, with all the metadata tags that are in these systems, it's really hard to get a filtered list, for example. So last night I was watching a hockey game and I typed a simple query into GPT-4 and said, give me 300 companies that look and feel like this particular company that are based in the United States, and then put their name in column A of a CSV and send it to me. And it did it. And it's super accurate. And it's that kind of stuff that it's just mind blowing. Some of the things that you can do with it. So GPT-4 is probably, for me, can't live without it.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. It's fascinating when I heard the prompt that you just gave it now. It's very important that what you put in is what you get out. Almost like the quality of the question that you ask determines the quality of the response that you get back. So the fact that you were so specific in terms of what you were looking for, the teams, the column that you wanted it in, the fact that you wanted it to be for a specific geographic location and not just to the world, and the fact that it gave you back that information so specifically. The prompt that you put into it is so critical to the output that it gives you.
Yeah, and I think people, it's a good point. Not to scratch my back at all, but I would tell people start with being ultra specific. If you haven't leaned into GPT, first of all, it's worth the $20 a month for GPT-4. It's really powerful, and it can produce graphs and charts and statistical things. You can enter, for example, I was working on some like a VC deck the other day for a friend of mine, not for my company, but he was having a trouble with like processing the information from his total addressable market into sort of like a graphical form. Like he's not a designer, right? He's a spreadsheet person. And so I took a spreadsheet, uploaded it to my version of GPT-4 in Azure, so it's privatized without any kind of PII in it. I paid $20 a month for it, and it spit out a graphical representation that, with a little bit of tweaking of the coloring, could be used in a deck. It's really great. So there's just some really crazy things you can do with it, but start with being more specific and dial it back rather than starting with broad requests and commands, because then you're going to get frustrated.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Joel, can you also share with our listeners maybe one or two books that you have read? It could be a book that you read recently or even one that you've read a very long time ago, but it still has had a great and profound impact on you. And that can be either a professional or even a personal impact.
Yeah, I'm going to reveal that my dad is an industrial psychologist, PhD in industrial psychology, and has written a bunch of papers on emotional intelligence, EQ and EI. And so I'm kind of a big fan of Dan Pink or Daniel Pink. And I think,
Yes.
they're business books, right? Like, so they might be a little cliche for some people, but in 2005, he wrote a book called The Whole New Mind. Right brain. It's kind of like the why right brain thinkers are the future. And I think there's a lot of interesting things in there that are pretty applicable today. Despite my little claim about using GPT, which might be more of a left-brained example, I'm probably a stronger right-brain person with communication skills specifically, rather than somebody that's going to put their head in a spreadsheet all day. And I think there are some really telling things and some really interesting things that people could use both earlier in their career and even later in their career with the Daniel Pink book. And then I thought one of the other books that I'd read recently when I thought about this was The Biggest Loser. It's the Adam Newman story about WeWork. I don't know if you've read that. It's actually kind of a fiery read. Like it's a cool book. But I think for me, the story was really interesting if you're interested in business. But it also is a really stark reminder that humility is really important in business. Like humility is so, being honest and being humble is a marathon play, but it's also the right play. It'll get you to the finish line. So I thought that was a good reminder of for me and anyone else that is in business and thinking about their own sort of virtue. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So we'll have the links to those books in the show notes of our episode. Now, Joel, can you also share with our listeners what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you are really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Yeah. For me, I work at a company that builds applied AI products and essentially listening, helping businesses listen to their customers more carefully and actively for that matter. And I think what I'm most excited about is sort of the evolution of AI in an ethical way. So I think one of the things, if you read any of the business reports, from the industry analysts and the industry consulting firms, the Bains, you read any of the stuff from the Harvard Business Review. I mean, fairly objective sources. People are really scared about using AI in their businesses specifically, let alone personally. But I'm thinking about it in a business light. And I think what's starting to happen is that the hype is dying down a little bit, and we're starting to see a more practical light in the application of AI where it's not so risky and that it is truly not going to replace everybody's jobs. It's going to help us sift through larger and larger data sets together so we can get to the root of very specific problems and solve for the root. Going back to my at the top of the show when I talked about abstraction layers. So for me, I'm really excited about that. I think more and more companies are adopting AI and doing so in an ethical, responsible, privacy conscious way. And the wild, wild west is starting to fade into the background as quickly as it grew. And I think that's exciting to me. And I know that sounds kind of nerdy, but that for me is progress.
All right, great. Thank you so much for sharing, Joel. Now, Joel, our listeners would have tapped into our episode and they would have liked to know how they can connect with you online. Before you share, though, how they can connect with you online, I don't believe I asked you this earlier, but I think we should share with our listeners, even though I'm aware, but they should know. Could you tell us a little bit about your organization, Sturdy, exactly what it does, and if they wanted to connect with you or Sturdy, how they could find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sturdy is very easy to find. I'll start there. But it's sturdy.ai. And I think for the relevancy of your listeners and our listeners today is, our thesis was that ultimately the customer experience is really the responsibility of every team. Again, I mentioned operations, services, product sales, marketing, leadership. Everybody's responsible for customer satisfaction and customer experience. And ultimately that leads to everybody being in charge of revenue and retention. And what we've realized over the years as being operators of businesses is that 75% of customers expect businesses to use some sort of technology to better their experiences. Like the time is now, yet we have all these silos in our business. So what our business does, what Sturdy does, is plugs into all of your data hubs where you're collecting communications from your customers, those day-to-day interactions, those really rich, meaningful, those emails, the tickets, the calls transcripts, the even unstructured text like surveys. We take all of that information in, privatize it, and we run language models on it to help find topics and trends to help improve the customer experience, and then make agents to deliver this data to the teams and the people and the systems that need it the most. So that's basically what we do. And we find that the outcomes are our customers are improving their NPS and CSAT scores almost immediately because they're more actively listening to their customers, but they're also seeing pretty strong lifts in customer retention and revenue as well. So both expansion and retention revenue. And I'm easy to find personally. I'm Joel Passen. As you mentioned, I talk a lot about customer experience and satisfaction on LinkedIn. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active, like I say, pretty active there. And otherwise, I'm just Joel at sturdy.ai.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, Joel, before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to give our guests a chance to share with our listeners. Do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? If for any reason you get derailed or you get off track or you get knocked down, and the quote kind of helps to just motivate you to get back up and to push forward and to complete whatever would have knocked you down. Do you have one of those?
Yeah, mine is I'm going to disappoint people because this isn't like super profound. But I tell my kids this too. And my dad used to tell me this, like every day is like the first day of school. You can reinvent yourself. The ability for humans to reinvent themselves is surreal. It's crazy. And if I'm having a bad day or I'm down or I'm stuck, I literally think about the next day and say, tomorrow's my day. I can be whoever I want. I can solve whatever I want. I sound like what is that guy on Saturday Night Live? Stuart Smalley. But reinventing, every day is an opportunity to reinvent yourself. And I think that's what keeps me going. And I truly believe that even if you had a bad day or bad interaction with your family or your team or what have you, tomorrow's a new day.
All right. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, Joel, thank you so much for hopping on our podcast and sharing all of these great insights as it relates to customer experience and debunking the myths, in customer experience that a lot of organizations are still driven by. Also talking about your organization Sturdy and, just where you see artificial intelligence going and how the adaptation is being taken more in a practical role now as, all the fanfare and excitement is dying down and people are really seeing how they can integrate it in a very practical and useful way, not just to eliminate human interaction, but to add to the value that they are using the technology to enhance the quality of the experience that the the customer is having. So thank you so, so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was truly my pleasure, and thank you.
Just want to remind our listeners you can follow us on X at NavigatingCX, and feel free to join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.